There being a quorum, I will call the meeting to order. Today's session is January 9th, working session. The meeting is being recorded by the recording clerk for record keeping, and Selectman Gant has asked to video record the meeting. Is there anyone else present who wishes to record? Hearing none. To attendees of the meeting, a sign-in sheet is being circulated. Do we have a sign-in sheet?
Yep.
David, if you don't mind signing in.
Just in case.
Just put your name on the top of my list.
We just keep doing this, David.
Yeah. All right, so we will move to our first agenda item, which is the fiscal year 21 budget review by department. Kevin, do you want
Sure.
to lead us through that?
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity for, I think these working sessions are going to be really great. An opportunity for everyone to kind of get into the weeds and go line for line and talk about how we operate and also what the numbers represent, increases, et cetera. What I've asked our department heads to do, we had a department head meeting on Monday. For the purpose of today, I'll lead the conversation as we go line for line, and then I've asked department heads who have maybe changes in their budget, or department heads who want to be present, because it is at the end of the day, the budgets they're going to live with, and if they want to be here to have a conversation. I know we've had conversations too about specifics. They certainly have a great expertise in the matters, and so I wanted them to be able to share that with them. So as the afternoon goes on, different department heads will be poking their heads in and sharing with, here being present for as we talk about the budget items. And so we start with Donna Rich, who's here to talk about town administrative budget, the selectmen budgets, and a few others that we'll cover today. What I'd like to do is, and let me just also point out that Catherine Gabriel's here to help along the way, fill in any gaps on the financial side of it as well. What I'd like to do is I put a schedule together of the different departments that will be coming today. I tried to put a page to the budget based on the budget which was provided at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday. Some of the department heads were not available but wanted to be present, so I moved some of them to different days and moved their and others into different days. So it's not going to necessarily be exactly in order, but I tried to keep it in order as best as possible. While also, like I said, recognizing that some of the department heads wanted to be here. So we might, towards the end, you'll notice we'll be flipping back into the budget today. And then also for the 16th, our next meeting will be at 2:30. We have a number of departments that will be presenting. Most of those are relevant to the follow-up meeting that we'll have, the joint meeting with the planning board, trying to get inspection services there, talk about the zoning budget, planning budget, et cetera. And then last, on the 23rd, I've outlined police, fire, education, highway, parks and cemeteries, and council on aging. So that might be a busier one, but there'll be a lot to cover there. But there's some really good information there as well. So that's sort of laying out over the next 3 working groups, sort of what I'm hoping to focus on. If any of you have any other direction you want to give me on things you want to cover, or go back to any budgets after the fact, get more information, I'll make sure that the right people are here if necessary, or I'll get the answer and bring it back to you at another meeting. Yeah, just again, the budget process has been a very, it's a comprehensive one. Most of the department heads have done this before in Topsfield, the budget, and so they have a good understanding of what's expected. Yeah. Catherine did a great job working with the interim town administrator to get guidelines out to departments. They provided, by deadline, we had 2 rounds, a tier 1 and a tier 2. First tier was due December 20th. Those are the departments that report to the town administrator, and then the tier 2 budgets from the departments were due to Catherine on the 27th of December. And those were the water and highway, et cetera, the ones that don't report directly to the TA, but have boards and commissions associated with it. Subsequently from there, the process was to put the omnibus budget together. Catherine worked very hard. I know I've said that before, and I want to make sure I acknowledge it. Over the holidays, we were communicating regularly as she pieced everything together, put all the different department budgets into one. That one budget's what you have in the packet at the end. So my process personally, and I've talked to you about this as well, is I've had a chance to meet with all the departments, whether they report to the TA or not, so water, highway as well, to talk about all the line items within their budget, just so I had a good healthy understanding of what they're looking for any increases. And more importantly, being my first year here, being able to understand what those numbers represent, practically speaking, in operations. A lot of time was spent over the first few weeks of my tenure, just getting to understand the budgets and getting to understand the departments, their operations, which led us to putting together what I believe is a pretty good budget. I know there'll be a lot of opportunity between the FinCom and these meetings to sort of pull and tug at the numbers, which they should. It's healthy, it's a good conversation to have to make sure that we're being thoughtful and that the numbers make sense. And so with that all being said, the next month's going to be busy, but in a good way.
So before next month, it's right now.
Yeah, well, we're in the middle of it. So if you flip
Could I
it,
just ask you then about the capital part?
Yes.
This is good, this is all the budget part. Are we planning to do anything with capital between now and the next 3 weeks, we'll say?
Yep, so at the department head meeting on Monday, I asked all department heads to go back to their sources for their numbers in the capital and make sure that those numbers have backup associated with them. If it's a quote, if it's a report, a study, just some sort of backup associated with the numbers that they're proposing. So we can look at it and say that scope of work's correct, and that number associated with it will be adequate and appropriate for whatever that work might be. So next week, I should have hopefully all of the backup I need. And we'll go through, my plan is to go back to all the department heads who've provided that. And again, I came in at the end of that first round of submittals in the capital. So my plan now is to get with the departments, just like I did with the budget, and understand exactly what those projects will be. I have a good understanding. I spent time when I did the budget with those departments that submitted capital. But now we'll have a little bit more depth to it now that we've had a chance to go through the budget and understand what those capital, we've gone through the capital a couple times. We've got the reports from Facility Dude. By the way, I wish they would change their name.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would just a little more professional. I don't know. Just, but it is a good system. It is a help that a lot of communities use it. It's a very reputable program. Don't let the name fool you. So some of the items in the capital are from that, and some of the items were provided by the different department heads. And so we're just going to reconcile all that and make sure we have a really thorough understanding of what's in there.
Okay. Thank you.
And there might be some things that need to move as well. I know FinCom's going to look at it, and timing of some of those, a couple of those might get pushed out based on sort of what the numbers we want at the end of the day for this year's available capital funds and prioritizing.
The meeting with FinCom on the 22nd, Kevin, is that both capital and operating?
Just take a peek at the calendar.
The 7 p.m. meeting?
I don't have it on this calendar here, unfortunately. The 22nd of this month.
Of this month?
I have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Just let me.
I'm sorry, what were you just asking, the 22nd?
The FinCom meeting.
No, because, no, that wasn't, FinCom didn't know anything about it, and it was a different date, and we couldn't get it together, I guess.
So that's off the calendar?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. The schedule, as it lays out more broadly outside of just the operating budget for this month, we have obviously our working sessions. FinCom will be meeting every Monday, as you know, at 7 p.m. My understanding, Catherine was able to attend the last meeting. I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting, obviously, but correct me if I misspeak on this, but there was no schedule provided on which departments will be asked to present at the FinCom meetings over the next month. However, they're going to be working and contacting directly to department heads to try to find the days that work for them, and then make it official, I think, at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's their schedule of talking with them, but they have liaisons and they've been working with them directly, with their various departments directly, so that's going on.
Yes.
And I think the FinCom has an overall discussion as to what they saw the budget and where things are going, what the guidelines are. They're going through that sort of thing before they even get to interview any of the departments. Okay.
And so I know some of the FinCom reps have reached out to department heads, and I asked the department heads if, for pre-meetings, I guess, before they go formally to the FinCom meeting to present, to just discuss the budget. So I've asked department heads if they're contacted by the FinCom, and I talked to John Guido on this as well, that if my schedule allows, I don't want to bottleneck anything, but if my schedule allows, I'd like to sit in on that meeting. as it being my first time through the process, and I think it's good for just to be that collaboration for myself to kind of hear where their thoughts are with the budget that's been proposed, even before we get formally to the FinCom meetings. So I've already sat through a couple of those meetings, fortunately. I've had to miss a couple as well, just because the schedule's, there's never enough time in the day.
Things to do.
But I believe the department heads have been communicating with Debbie and I on, as they've been scheduling those pre-meetings to let us know, so I can put on my calendars. My plan will be to be there when I can. So just kind of a top level look, if you go to the second tab within your binder, there is a breakout of the different elements of the budget, what makes up our budget. There's a pie chart, as you can see. The education is about 57% of the budget. That includes the Tri-Town, Masco, and the Essex Tech. There is 4.35 million in unclassified. There's 1.3 in debt service. 659,000 in cultural recreation, and these are categories broken up within the budget, categorizing multiple departments, sort of lumping some of them together that have some synergies. Human services is $280,000, public works $1.7 million, public safety is $2.8 million, and the general government's $1.67 million. And by percentage, like I said, the education's the lion's share of it. It's just under 57%. And then the next highest is the public unclassified. Unclassified.
I think we gotta find a different name for something that big.
It's a
Maybe the state
standard
calls
name
it
across
that,
the
but
state.
we've gotta come up with something.
Yeah, it's usually employee benefits and insurances.
That's what it is.
Yes, I mean, we know what it is, but it's just such a big number, we have to do
We can
something.
certainly change the name, it's just, we use that because that's what all the state reporting goes under. But we can certainly
Just
change the name.
because you're gonna be doing a presentation, you said you're gonna be doing one for the budgets and one for the capital.
Yeah.
If you're using some of this stuff with the public, I think it would be helpful almost, for example, in that one, maybe don't change the name if you can't change the name. But that would need a breakout. So, you know how you can take a pie and break the pie piece out? Just to show insurance, pension, I mean, those I think are things that people can recognize. When they see such a big hunk like that.
Break up that big piece into little pieces.
So they understand what are you talking about, this thing called unclassified? What's on, it's insurance, and that much is insurance, this much is in pension, this much is in
They used to call it the fixed charges, and I got too confused when fixed assets came out. So everyone just referred to it as unclassified, but yeah, we can certainly break it, I think it's a great idea, to employee benefits, retirement,
Because I'm just thinking
and
ahead, you know,
insurances.
a lot of people trying to understand and I've seen this one, the first time I saw it was like, yeah, I could get the data, but I'm going through I have time to go through the data. When you're trying to do a presentation within a 45-minute period, explain to everybody what's going on, I think it would be helpful.
Catherine, just a question. This does not include, the 57% for education does not include all the benefits for the employees in there, is that correct?
Well, it does, it includes the school employees too, I wouldn't have a
Okay.
breakout of that, but
Just,
it's not that it's not obtainable, the treasurer's office, but it wouldn't be easy to compile that breakout, but it does include.
What's the question, the difference
The
between,
insurance is included in that for the town
Oh,
and
in
the
the-
school,
is the
Gotcha.
50% the total cost we spend on education?
yeah,
Does it include all costs? That was the
it
question.
does.
Okay.
So that 57% would actually be higher though. is what-
Because when you look through the omnibus and things like that, it's separated out at the end.
The
So just
school
so
health
everybody
insurance
understands.
is also in the town the town health insurance.
That's in unclassified.
Yeah, yeah.
and then always.
So moving out, you said the school budget would go up and the unclassified piece would go down.
Right, but we're not talking about moving it out, we're just talking about
I
breaking that
understand.
up into, okay,
I
just wanted to make sure.
But if you were to.
For us, it's important to know that piece is included in unclassified.
It probably might be worthwhile to have that number, how much of that is school related, in terms of health insurance.
well, it wouldn't do any harm for sure, but
Be interesting.
whether or not the subject comes up,
Well, they should be presenting it.
you never know.
Yeah, just for clarity.
They don't,
They don't?
no, it's in, the town of Topsfield has kept it within the town's budget. I think, I don't know if it's Middleton or Boxford, I wanna say Boxford, the health insurance is carried by the town, but we had to have so many contingencies on it, it's such an arbitrary number, that years ago here, they put it into the town's budget. I personally would support that too.
Yeah, so.
One of the things about this, again, if we're showing it to the public, you don't have to make a big deal of it, but the public, in a sense, if the question comes, it needs to know that this does not represent the percent how their local taxes are going,
Right.
because some of what's in, especially in the schools, not only in schools, but in UGA over here,
Mhm.
is coming from grants, excuse me,
Chapter
from
70.
Chapter 70, literally
Yeah.
Chapter 70,
Yeah.
and UGA.
Right, highway as well, right, so that's a.
Chapter
example of
90.
Chapter highway.
Chapter 90 is not in that. Chapter 90 does not exist here anywhere.
It does not, that's true.
We do have there is another paragraph that just shows
Chapter 70
the
does.
three
Chapter
categories.
70 is in there, right, but not Chapter 90.
I'm sorry, Ken.
There is another paragraph that exists that shows the three categories
Oh.
of tax revenue, cherry sheet, and local receipts.
Catherine has everything.
Well, it's not too exciting because most of it is tax revenue. This is like little pieces of the pie for, 2 million here, 2 million there, but that's it.
And while we're on schools, it's worth noting, there's a special school committee meeting on January 25th at 8:30.
Saturday morning.
This is on Saturday morning of the MMA meeting.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
How did so much stuff get stuffed into this MMA meeting? It's conflicting with, it's really a shame. I'm thinking that I know I'm not gonna go to all of the MMA. I'm not sure I'm gonna go to
Sure.
any of Saturdays. Because, and I'm glad they're doing it, but it's unusual for them to do that. It's great, but, boy, it'd be awful nice to try to have some coordination between what's going on.
Mm. So those are some of the things that are happening around the budget. And Selectman Gant, you mentioned as well the open houses. Those are scheduled for February 6th and 13th. Budget and capital, 5:30 to 7, and it's encourage people from the public.
But the dates aren't set yet.
Those are the dates we were.
They are
They
set.
are set.
Those are the dates. Yeah, we're looking at
Thank you.
those dates to be the date. And so again, it will be an opportunity for the public just to it's just as it sounds, an open house. People can come in, ask questions, whatever's on their mind. Very much encourage people to come through. So it'll be a great opportunity to discuss the budget and meet with people in town. So beyond the breakout of the different the pie chart,
Didn't even start. You're at the end.
maybe about 15 minutes. If you
Okay.
want. We have an overarching breakout of the expenditure categories by function, so you getting a little more granular with it. And then department requests follows that. I think we could probably, sorry with you all, skip to the next tab, which is we have a breakout of anything that's, so as you know, each of the, in the other categories, FinCom has requested level funding, so 0% in that bottom number that exists. However, there's always certain places where identified needs come up, things are requested by the departments. So in the event that that takes place, we actually, it's not included in the yellow section within your budget, but it's a separate request. And the backup information, each department has to do a little bit of a quick blurb about what those additional requests are to better inform all of us on what that might look like. What I'm hoping today, as we go through this, I can give you a little bit more color behind what those look like, beyond just these blurbs. But this is something for you to refer back to as we go through this today, and then after we break, to go through as well.
So your plan was to go through this next here in detail, or you just
I was just, yeah,
Keep going.
this is information to revert back to after the conversation today.
Okay.
A lot of what we talked about is here, but wanted to explain to you sort of verbally, and this would be a reminder of sort of what we talk about today by going back to this sheet, which is all of the additional items beyond the level funding that's been requested. outside wages. Correct, yeah.
Could I just, and Catherine could correct me on this,
Okay.
the guidelines, level funding has to do with other, but it's all of them. What we see in the omnibus budget, if we did that based on the estimates, we would be able to function under 2.5. Theoretically, anything over what's in that omnibus budget, which means this one thing that you just brought up now, is something that will drive us over 2.5 and therefore require an override. Is that a fair representation?
I don't know if it is fair. It's not, the 0% guideline that they put out isn't based on, they're not looking at 2.5 when they're doing that. They're looking at what they want to bring to the table for discussion and in the other category, but I don't think that you can, it wouldn't be that you're not accurate in that, but I couldn't say that you are without doing the math.
Okay.
Because you're looking at the increases here of the steps and grades, which we talked a little bit about before. And those don't mirror 2.5%. Those are just based on existing personnel guidelines, for lack of a better word. So that doesn't necessarily tie back to 2.5%. That's the only place we're seeing an increase outside of debt service.
But you, I mean, you'll
For
also
fixed
see
costs.
like that, I mean, some of the, under the salary, some of them are more than 2.5%, just based on like some of the larger departments.
And
Based on
it
their
does,
current
in my
rosters.
mind, that doesn't make a difference. It's what that entire omnibus budget, as you put it together,
Yeah,
what it says on the bottom line, that at one point in the thinking of, the reason the guideline was established, they established a guideline based on, we have this much money coming in, based on 2.5 plus new growth. Therefore, in order to be able to do that within our budget, the department's allowed to do this. And then if we do all those things, we're good for 2.5. But of course, that's a lot of estimates. We all understand there's a lot
right,
of
but you
estimates
can't
in
just
there.
look at a 2.5% number, because there's things that are in this, for instance, the debt exclusions. The payment for the debt exclusions are in here, but that raises the levy by more than 2.5%. And then also the new growth raises it by more than 2.5%. So the number that we actually can tax up to,
Oh, that's good,
okay,
because those 2.5s are behind us. They've already been voted for, they're done. The taxes may go up, but people agreed to them a year ago, 2-3 years ago. So I agree with those. I don't consider that.
yeah,
What I'm saying is new 2.5. Is that the concept is that the omnibus budget is here, and if we did the omnibus budget with perhaps overrides for debt or whatever, that in fact we would be able to do our budgets and not have an override. If there's other than what the guideline is, then those other than guidelines could drive us into 2.5 territory in order to allow those things to come in. I mean, that's kind of what that was kind of like the concept.
you're getting into the territory of the whole model that the town
Yeah.
uses. And the omnibus budget is one small part of that model. So I don't think that you can make that statement that clearly.
Okay.
However, I'm looking at if you flip to page 20, it looks like 2.52%
Right,
is
but
what that represents with the Selectman Gant's referring to the 2.5%. It's not necessarily 2.5% because of the 2.5%.
right, but the school's not in here either. It doesn't necessarily mean that
We
we're
treated
gonna
3% by
require it
guideline.
override, right? We put in 3%, we
You got-
did
yeah, you
increase
got
this by
3%
3%.
Yeah.
But chances are that they're gonna come in at those numbers, aren't so likely based on history. And, but that doesn't mean it's gonna throw us, over the levy either. It's, the whole process of the model and budgeting and all that, so it's, when frequently discussed at the FinCom, and it came up again at last week's meeting, is they're trying to push the school to come in with some of their numbers a little bit earlier, so that we can have some better planning time. They're looking at the end of February right now.
And then that January meeting is a good piece of, a month before that they're presenting the budget. That's good. Yeah, okay.
So if we want to, we can just, what I was hoping we could do is go department by department and just go through what's in their budgets and answer any questions you might have as we go through it. So if you go to page 1, the moderator. a chance to meet with the moderator this week, actually. He told me he has not yet been paid his $50. Nor does he want it. Nor does he want it. Hopefully. But at any rate.
Let's get to Donna.
Selectmen budget. So this is all based, the town administrator is based on contractual obligations. And then in addition to that, the purchasing and development, which is Donna. Again, that's looking at a step increase for that position as well. The car allowance, so that was for the former town administrator who had a annual car allowance of $4,200. My car allowance is $3,000, so that went down a little bit. The executive secretary, our executive assistant for the office is the same, going up by a step. So you recognize there's an increase there. And the minute secretary, so that one is where there is a request for a $906 increase to that. Currently, how we operate when it comes to minute taking for the Board of Selectmen is that the executive assistant is present for the meetings, records the meetings, and comes back and types up the meeting minutes and then posts those. One of the issues we've seen is that to do that, we also share, as I understand it, some of the work is done by a third party as well. So, so Debbie and the third party work in collaboration to sort of divvy up those responsibilities of typing those up in a timely manner. Sometimes it's based on availability for the executive assistant. And so the one thing that I was concerned with when I was going through this budget, in which I've learned, is there's a couple departments where the minute taker is not, there aren't funds, necessarily enough funds to dedicate to the third party to do that, and that comp time's being used to substitute those that cost potentially in some ways. And so in the two locations, we'll talk about that later today, where that takes place, we've added funds into the budget so that there's enough monies available to, once the recording of the meeting takes place, for then the minute taker, whoever it might be, can be compensated for that time to take that and upload those minutes appropriately. So that's what that $906 represents.
How does that tie in, Kevin, with the $50 in the increase column?
So-
It's 50 is the increase that's within guidelines, and the
Yes,
906
the
is the
second grade.
additional?
Yeah.
Oh, the 9 is the additional.
Is the additional.
What's it, so do the colors again then, the colors mean,
The $50 is the increase based on step and grade.
right,
Requesting additional 906 it's a new item for increasing the hours.
could you just put in the notes, some of them are red and some of them
Oh,
are black?
the red are just anything that's in the red, requesting additional is on the above guidelines.
So red means it's in the addition, it's in the above guidelines.
Yes, yeah.
Thank
And
you.
so it's not in these numbers? It's
Right.
just off to the
Yes,
side?
Right.
of the
yeah.
document?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But every item that's in the percent over guideline is also somewhere as a note, as
Yes.
a, in the
That's
line
right.
So you
item.
can see it in the
Thank
budget.
you.
But it's
This-
not
this-
in the number?
This translates.
It's not in the number, but it's shown in the
Off to the side.
overall
In the
omnibus.
note.
Right, not as a total, but as an entry.
And
Yeah.
the only change in this year's budget from last year's budget in terms of how we're doing it is for the unclassified, the fixed charges, the insurance, retirement, all those. They are included in the final number, and I put them in green, because that's the green that the fixed charges show up in here.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
those are included,
Thank
because those are such a big number, and we wanted to have a closer look at what the budget is.
It makes the budget more realistic.
It makes it a little bit more realistic, because there's not much discussion about these.
So they're over guideline though.
Because they're increases, but they're,
What,
Uncontrolled, we can't,
Yes.
we don't have the ability, because it's an obligation, contractual obligation that they go up.
I made
Okay,
that
thank you.
change in the
Got it.
budget because the FinCom had done that right away last year.
So, yeah, so as we go through the budget, that's good that we I appreciate you asking that question.
Can I just ask a
of
question
course.
on that then? Looking at that last page, Catherine, in green, you've got, what's the category? Where it says increase, decrease in fixed charges included $9,400. You see the second note
Yes,
going
yeah.
down? But you go over and there's nothing in the increase, decrease yellow column, and it's a 0% fiscal
Oh, you're
year
right, yeah,
21.
so that is a correction on this. So that, in that, where that 196 is,
Yeah.
it should be 94 there, 9,400, which will put
In
that-
yellow,
in the yellow,
yeah,
Okay.
94 in,
And then with some percentage increase
yeah.
because of that.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
eagle eye,
Well, just so I'm reading it right, when I start at 0%, I
Yeah.
got to make sure I
that's
understand.
right, yeah.
That's good.
There's a couple of changes that we'll notify you of too as we're going through this, but then, in the second version, we'll have those corrected, and that will be the final version at that point until it goes to the next level.
Mhm.
So in the case where it says requesting additional 34,000 in red, on that same page at the very bottom,
Line,
yes,
line
uh-huh.
5, yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
so the
Yes.
red means it wouldn't be in the numbers, but it looks like
It is in the number, it's kind of being counted both ways, so we'll have to take a look at that.
You're saying that,
That should be in green.
It should be in green,
Yeah.
oh, this should be green,
the comment.
yeah.
Actually, I gotta correct myself, because
It-
that's not really, that's something, we kind of threw that number in there until we do analysis in terms of what we need for the salary reserve, and we haven't done that yet. We've received from the departments a 1%, 2%, and 3% increases, and we have to look at what those numbers entail. But that 34,000 that's in the yellow, I would actually remove that and just keep that on the over guidelines page, because that would have, that would require more of a decision.
It's debatable, it's a
Yeah.
number we could move.
So you're gonna take that out? you're
I'll take
saying?
that out, yes,
So that means the 125,000 changes,
yes.
reduces by 34,000.
Well, it would go back to
Go
91.
back to 91.
With a request
Yeah,
of
yeah,
34,000, so the
Yeah.
bottom line of this
Yeah.
budget will change,
Yeah, yeah, gotcha,
yeah.
I understand.
So, under the, selectmen expenses, just some house cleaning, basically, we made some, changes to the different line items to better represent and break out, publications, memberships and dues, travel, training, and conference into two separate categories, and did some estimates based on which types of expenditures we anticipate will go to where, and then we adjust the categories accordingly to best represent when the actual bills come in, where they should go. Worth noting, I am contractually obligated myself on MMA conference, the ICMA conference, some additional memberships, including MMMA, STAM, there's the MAPPO designation fee, MMHR, human resources, and then there's, from time to time, MMA classes that come up, usually $40 a class, but it's a good opportunity to hear what different communities are doing around different types of issues. I will note too that Donna Rich is going for her MAPPO certification, which is fantastic, and it's something that should be acknowledged when completed appropriately. So it's a very important designation, because procurement law in Massachusetts, in many states, can be very complicated, and to have somebody with expertise is a good thing. So that's generally what we're looking at there.
And even with all the items that you mentioned, Kevin, that still is a net of only an increase of $10, because it's just moving it
Correct, it's making it, putting it in the right spot.
into the right categories, yeah.
And you'll also notice, and sort of skipping down, if you go to the next category, travel, training, and conferences as well, there's $2,100 in that category, which, doing the estimates on all the costs that we have, including that number there, we believe should suffice our exposures to any of the team members in the TA's office, or the Board of Selectmen for any MMA conferences, or any additional training like I mentioned. Going back up above that line though, if any questions on the publications and memberships and trainings, it's pretty much level funded. Just moved. Going down the selectmen special legal services, So, we have obviously $55,000 annually that's put into the budget. The actual expenses in fiscal 18 was 58,000, fiscal 19 it was 51,000. And we looked back even further to the last year we had collective bargaining. We have 5 units that we're gonna be negotiating with between now and finish. Those contracts all expire June 30th of this year. And so we do anticipate, as we ramp up, some legal fees associated with that. So we did include an increase of $10,000, that gets us to 65. 3 years ago, the cost of legal services, like I said, were close to $70,000. And so we're trying to be reasonable about how much we spend and not overestimate what those costs will be, and try to live within the means that we have. But that 10,000, I think, is a reasonable place to go, knowing that we have some significant contracts all happening at the same time, as well as a cable contract, which we have another line item that will address the legal expenses on the cable contract.
Kevin, just comparing, just for clarification, we look at fiscal year 20, there's an appropriation, and then fiscal year 20, what we actually expended. So if
Yes,
you look at the legal
Yep.
area, we appropriated 55,000, but we spent 10,000.
correct.
162. We're thinking, even though we only spent 10,000 last year, we have to up the 55 to 65?
The 10,162,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's this year.
It's half the,
That's this year.
Year to date till
That's
July,
year to date
end of
this year.
December.
yeah, year to date,
Okay.
End of December.
and
And it's true, it's,
so we're on
that
pace
would
for
indicate 20,000 for the year.
Right, so
Okay.
that's a lot lower
It is
than the
less.
55, and we're saying we need to go to 65. We're not anticipating that much more than we had last year?
I'll be honest with you, I only have actuals to go off of at this point, and the actuals for the 3 previous years, they did meet the 55, and then the year we had, it spiked the year that we had collective bargaining. I hope we don't have to go anywhere close to that number at the end of the day, but just based on historical numbers, when it came to the times when we were doing the collective bargaining, this number represents a number that allows for that expenditure if
So
needed.
could we just be timing, the second half of the year tends to incur more?
So this here is also year-to-date through 12/31. However, in terms of what's been paid through the legal services is through October. So
We
the
haven't got
billing
the
is
November
delayed
bill
by
yet.
that. And then also they pick up a lot during, from now on.
It's just the timing of it,
Yeah,
the second
I
half.
thought Robin spent a good bit.
Well, but that was October and November, so we'll be.
Yes, that's the point, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, legal fees.
October, November, and part of December.
Yeah.
Legal fees tend to lag more than any other.
Okay.
Again, it's just a really tough number to really, but knowing the collective bargains, they're kind of, this is more than anything else, an acknowledgement that there's gonna be probably some
Well,
costs.
but the point is, you studied it well enough to know that the year that we do collective bargaining, it's typically up. And that's what you're trying to.
That's, just looking at the actuals, right. If, you know, based on where we are today and we look at projecting out what the costs are, you know, the will of the Board of Selectmen or the FinCom are different, we'll live within our means, we'll still get those contracts done and we'll do it right, whatever that might be, but, again, just acknowledging what the historical is really all I have to go off at this point, and that's what we did.
In past years, with some of these budgets being relatively small, the agreement was with the FinCom that we did not have to have each individual department come quote within guidelines, but we could wrap together several things, the selectman special, moderator, whatever. We could wrap those together and say, well, in this department, this went down, and so the department is down, and we're gonna use those dollars in this department to do legal, for example. So just so you're aware that we've done that in the past.
Okay.
What is the definition of what that category is? How much can we swing? I mean, what is the
Well, it's
roll-up?
a 0% guideline though, so there was, and they did that when it was 2%, and we came back and we showed that the Board of Selectmen departments altogether met the 2%, even though there was up and down within the categories.
So it's within what level here? So it's like all selectmen stays and you can move within that, but you can't go over into the treasurer category and move?
No, so you can go between the salary and wages count as a bottom line. So it's in the blue, whatever you see in the light blue, that's a bottom line number that you can't exceed.
Okay, And so anything above that, those breakouts, you can have flexibility.
Yes,
But they have to add up to that, and you can't move them
no,
into other categories.
Correct.
not without a special town meeting or a
Yeah.
year-end appropriation.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So that's it for that category, the selectmen special. Finance committee, there is a minute taker, again, the increase in the step, is what that $74 represents. Accounting department, what we've done there is again, a step increase for the town accountant. And then, there's a step increase as well for the assistant town accountant, as well as a request in that department for some additional hours for that assistant town accountant. I'll let our town accountant maybe explain sort of what's led to that request and why it's in there, based on some of the requirements that are, or the needs coming out of the department.
So the town accountant, if you were to look it up by definition, what they do is they pay the bills, and that's something that's a shared responsibility between, in my office, between the assistant town accountant and myself. We pay the bills, and we also process the payroll. We review all the payrolls and prepare them before they go into the treasurer's office, where they actually get entered into the system. My job has been pulled away from that, and the assistant town accountant is focusing solely on those roles, and she's constantly here. Long after hours, when everyone else has left. She's supposed to leave at 4, she's regularly here till at least 5, comes in on weekends, here on Fridays. She's, the way it works here is people are working with comp time, we've exceeded comp time limits, and just the responsibilities of the department require that there's some more hours in there in order for us to continue to function the way that we've been functioning, and, I'm being pulled out for other items, other things, that is putting a lot more responsibility. I'd like to be training the assistant town accountant more, in the event that something were to happen to me. That just is the number of hours that she's constantly working now warrant that the hours that she's allotted meets that. The other item that I'm putting in for is a few years ago, when I first started, I got a printer for the office, and one of the things that's kind of been hanging out there is where the expenses for the printer are gonna come from, meaning that these here are printed on my printer. The color cartridges cost about $600 to replace. I need to replace them at least once a year, and that never was increased in my budget. So I feel like I have to go and beg the Board of Selectmen's office to buy me printer cartridges. I'd like to be able to support it within my own department.
And one thing we're trying to do and be consistent with is if there's equipment outside of the department, so a general printer that's used or copy machine, as we go to the next line item, we'll talk about this a little bit, but those will be in the town hall budget. Whereas if the department has specific equipment that they're solely using, recognizing that within their budget. It's just a better way to manage the process and understand what the real costs are within those departments. So to Catherine's point, that's why that number, that as you look at the actuals, there was 0, then there was a charge, and it was 0. Last year was nothing appropriated. It's certainly something people will look at and ask the question why that's there, but that's really based on sort of that structure that we're creating, where if it's solely for that department, we want it to live in that department's budget.
The third item that's an increase in my department is the financial audit, and that's contractual based on for fiscal year 21. I think we are contracted with.
It's a quote that we got.
It's not a quote. It's a well. I mean, I guess it's based on the availability of funds.
That's a $1,300.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Catherine, the things that you're being pulled away to do, are they one-time items? Are they new responsibilities that are coming into you?
Well, I mean, I'm a key financial person for the town, and whenever there's something that has to do with the finances, like for instance, the capital budget, that's not something that's been a responsibility of mine. But that was a 2-week process. There was a time when, the issues that were happening with the school was being pulled into that. I mean, between my own hours, I'm constantly working extra hours, I'm working a lot of hours from home on weekends. And I know there's a piece of that comes with my job, but when my assistant's doing that too, and when I'm looking at what's going on, I don't wanna be coming up from behind, I wanna be ahead. And, in terms of what we're doing, and be more proactive and not be dealing with everything on a crisis level, so I feel like the only way to make it right within the financial office is, one, you either add a clerk in the office, or we have an excellent assistant town accountant who's very capable and very dedicated. I'd like to see her receive the hours.
And also mention too, is one thing that philosophically I wanna approach with the way that the organization is structured, is to bring the different departments that have incredible expertise in different matters, break down silos and bring them into conversations. We really instituted financial team meetings, which takes time from all the departments to sit around, and out of there are projects that certain departments might not have touched because it's not solely they're not solely responsible for it, but there is a place for them to be involved. So I've seen already, and correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here before I wasn't here, but there seems to be, I'm trying to bring the different departments and take some of their time actually, so that we can be all overall more productive at the end of the day, because everyone's working on the same project and bringing up great points and working as a team. So, for what it's worth.
And my job and job title is town accountant, but I mean, a lot of things in terms of what the tasks are of my job, the functions of the finance director. And I'm perfectly happy being a town accountant for Topsfield, but it needs to be recognized that I'm doing things that are above and beyond paying the bills here. So I think that I gotta make sure that bills are getting paid still, and in order for me to keep functioning with the things that I'm doing, and this isn't new, this isn't just because Kevin came on or that Robin was here temporarily. This has been an ongoing issue, that the hours in my office, I feel strongly need to be increased.
So we were probably paying for it anyway, but in comp time.
Yes.
Where now we're just making it part of the regular salary.
Yes, and Sue Lamise is that person that serves as the assistant town accountant. She's also been here she's a resident, she's also been here for 18 years working in the fire department, and she continues to work in the fire department, the additional 6 hours, and I just feel like if we could divert the resources to where they're needed, and, it's 2 fixes at the same time.
Would she continue to work those hours?
She would not be able to, but,
We've had conversations with Chief, if this is passed, what that might look like with some reorganization. I also mentioned that Chief's other support, administrative support, Diane down in, who also works in special services, with the change of her hours, as we've talked about before, and the coverage there, there's some transition for her out of the fire department as well. Which means that this might be an opportunity, rather than have multiple kind of patching together a few hours from this person, a few hours from this person, for Chief to have somebody who could still pick up those same hours, but have a dedicated person for the fire department.
I personally don't like comp time. I personally think it clouds the budget issue, because it doesn't really show us what the real budget is.
It's a hidden liability.
It's a hidden liability for sure, and it ought to be somewhere, because I don't think we take good care of comp time. I don't think we have any way of logging when people take comp time. I don't think we know what comp time costs per town.
no.
And I think that's a fallacy that we're living in, because we don't really know what some of these departments cost us.
Comp time's very difficult to monitor, and it's something where I've said to the financial team and to others, in the whole conversation around HR, policy, procedures, et cetera, what's outlined in that June 25, 18 guide that we're using, looking at the whole of it, and trying to put measures, consistency around how we operate as a team and as an organization. Comp time's just one of those things that seems to be very unorganized, which is sort of when it comes to HR, you try to be as organized as possible. So,
I'm sure that's something that'll come up in the audit.
Yes, yes, and I think I mentioned to you, I'm doing my own sort of assessment and sort of tracking.
And we have comp time issues with other departments too, this isn't just your department.
Right.
It exists in several other places.
So, Catherine, anything else you want to mention on this? I mean, everything else is basically level funded.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
No, but
Here's-
I think you also just need to keep in mind is that this, you know, I mean, we've had an interim town administrator, we have a new town administrator, we have a new treasurer. There's still a lot to do with managing the debt, even though we've passed that, but I've been a big part of that. I just think that the request for the additional hours in the office, I don't know how to express, but to take my word for it that it's needed.
Mhm.
Assessor's office, unless there's any other last questions on the accounting. Assessor's office, same thing on the salaries and wages, the step increases to the two staff members there. The increases on here include the map updating, that is contractual, as well as a $150 increase on a $3,500 contract. And Fiscal has been working hard to try to keep that price down year over year. But the cost this time is something we're gonna absorb. And then, the publications, we have $1,300 allocated to it. Last couple of years, the cost is excess of that. The publications are necessary. One's the black book, which is the motor vehicle assessment tool, and the other one is the McCall Swift, and that is basically how assessors use as their guide and how they assess value of properties. And again, this is something standard in all assessors' offices throughout the Commonwealth, and necessary publications, and the costs for those have already gone up, but now we're actually recognizing it in that budget line item with the request for the increase.
So these are necessary for their daily operations?
Yes. Essential. Treasurer's office.
I don't think she's gonna do it.
Oh, sorry, treasurer, sorry, treasurer's tomorrow. We'll just skip the treasurer's office, we'll come back to that one next week. Going to go to the town hall expenses. And, you know, if it's all right with you folks, I had that next scheduled, but we do have a couple of department heads here, and I want to be respectful of their time, so if it's all right, I'd like to actually skip the agenda slightly.
Sure.
Sure, whichever one, right, which one are we on?
Do what you want.
We'll go with the
Town hall?
town clerk, if that's all right, which
Yep,
is,
yep.
if you skip to the next page, page 5. Beth Wills is here, our town clerk, just to fill in any gaps, but basically, same thing on the wages and salary. Election workers, however, has gone up this year, and the reason for the increase of $2,000 there is due to the fact that we'll have a third election this fiscal year. We have the primaries in September, elections in November, and then and those are state and national, and then we have the local election next May, which we need to have coverage for it as well. And then, in addition to that, just going up and to acknowledge it, that there's additional wages for the clerk that was included in the budget last year, $5,000. The last 2 years, I should say. That line item was reduced down by $2,000.
Which one is this, which one?
Sure, that's, if you, I went back up, that's a reduction of $2,000 in the yellow, under additional wages clerical.
From 5,000 to 3,000.
Mhm.
So there's a reduction on that line item to more
Yep,
accurately.
give us some breathing room, okay.
Yeah, and there's still some dollars in there for the purposes, as I understand it was created for, was for some of the additional requirements that came out of the new public records request law. But it also serves for if there's additional needs for any workers for the elections. It does include the 2610 and the additional 1959, jumping around again to the election workers number, does include fully staffing those for those elections, but this is an opportunity if there's an additional need for any staffers to be able to use that line item as well. How'd I do?
Sounds good to me.
She's shaking her head yes, so you're doing all right.
I'll take it.
So it's really a wash there. You took it from
Yes.
temporary help down 2,000 and then you put it
Exactly.
into election work.
Exactly.
Yep.
The 1959 also includes estimate for early voting too, because with the November election, we will have 2 weeks worth of early voting.
And that's something of an unknown number as well.
Right,
It's
exactly.
become more popular as it's become more recognized
Mm.
by people. So again, that's an opportunity.
Give me this one, we'll have- that's,
Sure.
Beth, would you sit here so people, you have a right to sit here. Beth, you have a right to sit here. Move, just move the chairs.
So outside the salary component, we also, the other 2 increases on the budget line items. One is building rental, $150. That represents 1 additional election and the need to rent, the rental costs associated with that. And then the last one is the election expenses. We have an additional $3,062 associated with that. And that's logistics, correct?
It's ballots, it's programming of the cards that go into the tabulators and the automark machine, which is what handicapped people would use for marking their ballot. And it includes ballots as well, and
Wait a second, are you tied up? You have a customer, sorry.
well, it's after 4.
Okay. All right.
You know what, we're
I'll
wrapping right now.
I'll be up there.
If you want to let them know,
Like-
Beth will be a bit,
She's
we'll be
closed.
wrapping.
She's gonna be done very shortly.
So does this go up every election year, Beth, then? Because it
It-
looks like it skips years.
It fluctuates. This is, it fluctuates. This is a big election year. In my mind, I have 4 elections this year, but this
Yeah.
budget only includes 3 elections because of the way we do the fiscal year. So it's a presidential year, so that's why it's so big. So it's almost every other year I have a bigger year because we
Okay.
have state elections, state and/or,
Yeah, that's how it looks,
Yeah.
18.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it always goes up
Went
and
up
down.
19, back down.
Yeah. The new thing that we're still trying to figure out, that Kevin kind of mentioned already, is the early voting thing. We've only done that twice in Massachusetts so far, so we're still getting used to that. And that's offered with state elections, and this time, we're starting this year, they're actually offering it with the primary too. We're gonna do 5 days of early voting for,
So how might that pull from that money? Does that mean additional monies to your existing staff?
yes, I might have staff here. Kevin and I, it's another thing, we kind of had a real basic conversation about how we might do early voting. The first time we did early voting back here in the new building, I did it right in front of my office, actually in my office, and it was very disruptive to the work of the office.
Took the word out of my mouth.
Right, Erin and I basically dealt with it ourselves. What Kevin and I kind of touched base on very briefly one day was moving it somewhere else in the building, and in that case, we'd have to have election workers staffing it. So that's the pros and cons of, like, if we move it someplace that we have more space, then I can't be there watching it, then I have to pay somebody to monitor and to staff it. If we don't do that, then Erin and I kind of get nothing done during early voting, so it's a pro and con.
And we have some space that's not every town hall has now that we've done the renovations of the building, so I want to, explore all those options. We have the great
Public hall.
public hall. Got the public hall, which is fantastic. We actually had some students from Proctor up there today, and I think tomorrow as well.
No, it's just a
Just-
one-day event.
Just the one day event?
Yes, yeah.
Doing some science projects upstairs. It was actually really neat. It was fun to see some additional usage up there, so anyways. Beth, thank you. This is great work, and I appreciate your work on it.
No problem. Any other questions?
Thanks, Beth.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
So, we have 2 other department heads here who I'm going to prop up on the schedule. There's some commitments by team members for later this afternoon, so I wanted to make sure we address their budgets.